Can you try and join and see if it's going?
What's your thing?
Natalie_V_C.
The TV flash.
Yeah. That's so funny.
Oh no.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
But it's echo.
I'm gonna mute myself.
Okay. I'm just gonna start it so that I will start for my English. Okay. Hi everybody. I'm gonna be decorating some cookies here on Twitch today. Should be a fun time. We'll talk about some of the stuff I've baked. You guys can help me pick what to put on my sugar cookies. And I'll also talk, I think, a little bit about the book I've been reading. Probably the most exciting thing happened to me lately. And I'll talk a little bit about Fawn that's coming up this weekend, which is the other big event in my life in the near future. So what I'm doing now is I have these royal icing kits. I'm a member of the Presidential Leadership Academy at Penn State. Oh boy. And we had a fun event from a lady who runs a business decorating sugar cookies. And she mailed us all kits with some sugar cookies, these icing kits, some sprinkles, and other stuff. And we had a fun session where it was Chinese New Year themed, hence the colors, which I'll show you once I've mixed the food coloring back into all of these. And it was a really great time. We learned some royal icing decorating techniques. We learned about how she started her business and the challenges she's had in doing that and moving to the online setting with the pandemic and whatnot. But it was a really great event. I always love anything related to baking or arts and crafty. So that was really a great intersection of the two. And all of the cookies were Chinese New Year themed, which was really fun. It's the year of the ox this year. And so we had some cookies that were ox shaped. We had some cookies that were flower shaped. We had some that were shaped, I think, like a pagoda, which was fun. And we had some that were shaped like lanterns for the Chinese New Year. And the lady who ran the company showed us how she decorated her cookies, gave us an example to work off of, and then we went off. We had 2 of each kind of cookie, so we got to be a little bit creative and decide what we wanted our cookies to look like. And that was a lot of fun, but I found after the session that I still had all of this royal icing left over, and she said it keeps well at room temperature for several weeks, so I wanted to make sure it got used up before it was too long. I always like decorating stuff. I like baking. I like eating cookies, so it was a good idea. So I'll show you all the colors we have here. We've got a red, an orange, a gold, a yellow, and a white. Not very much white left, and there's not a whole ton of yellow left either, but we'll make do with what we have. And I baked up some sugar cookies yesterday and today. I've been reading a cookbook called How to Bake Everything by Mark Bittman. And it's very out of norms of the kind of cookbook I usually would read. I'm a big fan of cookbooks with pictures, like really beautiful photography, and like thoughtful descriptions of why the recipe is included in the book, what significance it has to the author. But this cookbook is very much an encyclopedic resource for a baker. It has just about every dessert you could ever think of, and each main dessert recipe category is broken down into several variations, which can range from something as simple as let's add chocolate chips to these muffins to let's change the whole entire fruit that is the backbone of this dessert. And one of the recipes in there was for sugar cookies. And since we had just had normal sugar cookies during the PLA event, I didn't want to do anything too similar, so we went for an almond sugar cookie with some almond extract and a shot of amaretto in there to spice things up and bring that almond flavor really strongly. And so I prepared the dough yesterday. It had to chill overnight so it could roll out better. And then this morning, I rolled out the cookies, and I cut them out, and we have two shapes here. So I have this pixelated heart cookie. All the cookies spread a little bit with the heat of the oven. I bet if I had cut them out, frozen them again, and then baked them, I may have been able to avoid that, but I was on a bit of a time crunch, so we'll work with what we have. I also have some cute little chubby llamas here. You can see they also spread, but you can tell what they're supposed to be. So we got a few of each of those, and we'll go through and bake those today. If anybody on the stream has an idea of what I should decorate my first cookie with, feel free to pop it in the chat. In the meantime, I will probably just make one with some little red decorations on it. I feel like that's appropriate for the heart, but I'm definitely red and gold, Coffee Star 34. Thank you. I think that sounds like a great idea. So I'll start decorating, and hopefully you guys can see it. Oh, closer is better. Okay. Hopefully you guys can see it as I'm decorating. I'll talk about in the meantime, I gotta get this unplugged here. There we go. I'll talk about in the meantime, I attended a Schreier event this morning that was all about how they handled the pandemic in Sweden. And what I really like about these Schreier events they've been having this semester and last semester is they're called World in View events. And there's two things that are great about them. The first one is they always bring on someone from another country, which is really interesting because they're always at times that feel just a little weird. They're very early in the morning. They're kind of at like 3 p.m. when meetings don't tend to be, or they're late at night, like 8:30 or 9 at night. And that's because they want to make sure that the person, whether they're in Nepal or Sweden or Africa, we've had a really wide variety of events these past couple of semesters. They want to make sure that they're able to participate, and really it's the best timing that it possibly can be for two parties who are across the world from each other. But anyway, this event this morning was all about the pandemic in Sweden, and that I've read a few articles about. I kind of knew what I was getting into, but what interested me more was she was talking about just the general social dynamic in Sweden and how much importance they give to social issues like wage equality and parental leave. They have really strict stipulations that make companies do analyses every couple of years to make sure that they are doing equal pay for equal work as their government expects them to do. And additionally, it is required, I think, that both the mother and the father take some time off of work, fully paid. Of course, it's like maternity leave or paternity leave to, be able to spend time with their child during these important developmental stages. Another interesting thing that happened was a lot of businesses in Sweden were finding that they didn't have enough work to give people that could be done from home. It was stuff that had to be done in the office, but these people couldn't come in. But rather than laying these people off, the Swedish government stepped in and basically said that we will pay most of these people's salary. You can have them work 10, 20, or like 30% of what they would normally work, but actually they're still going to get paid 90% of what they would usually get paid, so that this isn't disrupting them incredibly much in a financial way, and it's also not hurting the businesses. But what they've been told to do with this extra time isn't just to sit around and watch Netflix, wouldn't that be the dream? But actually, they're trying to work with a lot of different Swedish sort of like educational businesses so that people can get training while they have all this extra time. Companies, and she said companies with good managers, because not everybody is taking advantage of this time in the smartest way, but companies with good managers are telling their people who are on these, say, 30% work allowances that, hey, you know, with some of this extra time, since we are still paying you most of what you would usually earn, why don't you get this training in this particular lab technique, or even just something like management or cultural competence, so that once the world opens back up again, they are able to have an even stronger workforce coming back to them than they had even pre-pandemic. So it was very interesting to hear from the guests there. They had a lot of insights I hadn't known about. Sweden is definitely on my travel bucket list, I'll say. A lot of Europe is. I was hoping to take a European vacation this summer, and I had been planning it out for years and years. You know, unfortunately, the pandemic happened, so that is a little far off. But I'm sure I'll get over there eventually, and I know I've been luckier than a lot of people to be able to have visited there already. I went to Spain with my high school Spanish teacher. Yes, I see you there, Phoebe. Hello. We do love to travel. I went to Spain with my high school Spanish teacher for about 2 weeks over Easter, and that was one of the best experiences I ever had. I got to try paella. I got to see so many incredible monuments and landmarks. Even the bridges were so beautiful. I remember being impressed with that. But the food was so good. And I also got to practice my Spanish. That's another thing. I know Phoebe and I, in the beginning of our time at Penn State, would take some Spanish classes together, and that was one of the highlights of my career. I really loved getting my Spanish minor here at Penn State. And I remember, I don't know if Phoebe remembers, a class we took, Introduction to Hispanic Literature. We read some really crazy short stories. I think it was like Borges. I want to say that's who he was. And there was a man who was like both running away from somebody in like Aztec times, but also crashing his motorcycle. Do you remember that, Phoebe? That was a crazy story, and trying to read it all in Spanish. Yeah, it was crazy. Coffee Star saying he's always wanted to try paella, or they've always wanted to try paella. Very fun food. So that's the best part, is you get to try saffron, the expensive, fanciest spice in the world. You know, sounds very cool, sounds almost, you know, unattainable, but it's so delicious. I even had one, it was a squid ink paella while I was in Spain, and so it came out and it was black, you know, because the squid ink is really tasty. It had, yeah, it had just about the right level of saltiness. It wasn't quite too much from the ocean, but it was a really stunning visual appeal. I'll show off our first cookie here. I went for a gradient kind of vibe, going from the red into the orange and the gold. Don Quixote paragraphs out of context. Absolutely, Sierra, that was a very fun time. Reading all of Don Quixote in Spanish was absolutely an experience. Thank you, guys. I appreciate the comment. I have this chubby llama. I love him. I need suggestions for a name for him and what colors he should be. As a reminder, we have red, orange, gold, yellow, and white. So our little llama is a little limited. But while we're waiting on that, I will talk a little bit about Don Quixote, since I came in. Carl the llama. That's perfect. Yeah. What color is Carl going to be? You guys can decide. So Don Quixote was this class I decided to take, gold and white. All right. We can go for gold and white. We'll see how much I can make this still resemble a llama by the end of it. Anyway, so I tried to take the Don Quixote class. It was the second to last class. Or blue and black. Gosh, that was such a meme, that dress. It was the second to last class I had to take for my whole Spanish minor, and I don't know why I thought this would be an easy class that wouldn't take much effort, but I did, and I was wrong. But the professor is actually a really cool guy who grew up in Spain, and as such had a lot of memories of Don Quixote as a pop culture phenomenon. He showed us episodes from like a animated series that they did of Don Quixote on Spain's sort of like PBS equivalent. And that was really fun to watch. Neat to see how much a book from like the 13th, 14th, 15th century, I don't know, hundreds of years ago. Yeah, hundreds of years ago is still so relevant today, and so many different works of literature have taken guidance from that. It's just crazy to see when you start seeing the similarities after you've read it. But there was one character, and I can't remember her name for the life of me, but I remember telling Sierra about it, who was like surprisingly feminist for the time of Cervantes. Like, I was reading this and incredibly surprised to find such an almost modern character in this book. And we had a sort of like instead of a midterm, a short paper to write about whoever your favorite character was and how they were impacting the story. And I think the professor said that like 2/3 of the girls in the class all chose, I want to say her name was Marcella or something, they all chose this feminist modern character that just was so incredible but seemed so out of place, but was definitely fun to read about. And yeah, it certainly was a fun class, but it was a lot of work. And every day in that class, we would go in and have a discussion with one random person, and we'd have to read like 30 pages, I think, every between class. It was like Tuesday, Thursdays, and have discussion questions prepped from them. And yeah, really, it was it was a lot, but I'm glad I took it because it gave me an excuse to read, and to read something that really is a classic. Oh, and then I watched Jeopardy towards the end of that semester, and there was a category about Don Quixote, and I felt so proud because I knew all the answers. It doesn't often happen with a whole Jeopardy category. But actually, one of the fun facts about Don Quixote, not to make this all about Spanish, I don't know, is that Don Quixote is split into two parts, both by Cervantes, but there was a gap of some years between the two parts. And it was a long enough gap that people thought that Cervantes had given up on the character, that he was never going to resolve the story of Don Quixote, and this other author decided that he was going to basically write a fanfic about Don Quixote and publish it as Jeopardy Queen, thank you, Phoebe, as the second part to Don Quixote to continue his adventures. Well, Cervantes caught wind of this and got real mad because it was his characters, his Don Quixote and his Sancho Panza. And so he hurried to write his second version, which had been so long awaited. And in it, Don Quixote is baffled throughout his journeys by this other Don Quixote who people claim to have already met when they had never met him. And basically he works this whole drama of this other guy taking his characters into his second part of his book by making there be a false Don Quixote who had gone around and like disheveled his name, which was really crazy. And it was just felt like Cervantes only wrote the second part of Don Quixote as like a burn book to this other guy who had decided to use his characters. But yeah, basically Don Quixote AU, absolutely. But yeah, having an excuse to read, I really love that. Don't have all that much time nowadays outside of school and everything. I'm sure ladies in the chat can agree. But I actually, through POA, who, for anybody who wasn't here at the beginning, set up these cookie decorating kits for me, which is where I had the icing from, had one of the members took a class at, I want to say, Michigan State University last semester when they were doing like the exchange. Bye, CV. It was good to see you. Hear from you, whatever. she did a class exchange, and she took, I want to say, like, Introduction to Islam Studies or something along those lines. And the professor wanted to start a book club. Oh, all right. Carl is kind of looking like Ronald McDonald or a clown. We'll see if he comes back from this. Anyway, the professor is starting a book club, and the PLA offered to buy us the books, and never being one to turn down a free book, I signed up for it, and so it's called the Muslim Journeys Book Club, and I have very little experience learning about or knowing about the Muslim faith, but the book, I'll just bring it, the book that I just read, we had the first book club tonight, was called The Lover, a Sufi mystery, and it's set in, I want to say, like, year 300 Baghdad, which, you know, historical fiction usually is not where I would go initially for reading, but it was actually a pretty good book. It was fun to try and figure out the mystery on your own. There was a murder happened at the beginning. A servant boy was killed, and you got to see the police investigating, ruling it out, but then other parties were looking into it further, and yeah, there was a lot of intrigue and a lot of sort of casual information about how these people were practicing their religion, and even the interaction between Christian people who happened to be in Baghdad, Muslim people, and different sects within Islam. So it talked about the difference, how they practiced their religion, and even the tensions that were present between whose interpretation of the holy word was correct. So definitely it was something I wouldn't have picked out for myself off of a library shelf. But I'm really glad that I read it, and it was interesting, and the book club is with the author of the book tonight, so it'll be really interesting to hear what she has to say about it. And I think as well, there's 2 other books, I think, throughout the semester. And one of them is a graphic novel. I'm really interested to try that one out. I also don't read graphic novels very often, but I'm excited to give it a try. And the other one just came in the mail, and I think it's another historical fiction sort of book. It is about the story of the Prophet Muhammad, and I think it's sort of historic fictionalized, but not incredibly. It's from what I got from the back cover of the book, so I haven't read it yet. But it is, he had a very interesting story, and so she worked it into a novel. So I'm interested to try it out, but yeah, definitely a jump outside of my comfort zone that I have enjoyed hearing about. And Sierra said she wants to read the book. You can definitely borrow it. I finished it, so I will pass it along. It's starting a series now. It's the first of the mystery, but I read in the back of the book, you know, they have the preview for the next book. It said the second mystery is available, and it has the same characters, which is fun, because by the end of it, you really are starting to care about the characters and wanting them to, there's a couple that I ship and I want them to get together, but they didn't. You'll have to see. You'll have to see if you read it, Sierra, but you are definitely welcome to borrow that book and any of the other books that show up. I know Sierra has been learning Arabic for a while, and I was always so impressed with that. I tried to learn a little bit of Japanese, and it's just so hard when it's not the, like Greco-Roman alphabet that we're so used to. It just adds another layer of complexity, and I was always very impressed with her commitment to Duolingo. Okay, so this is Carl. I think he kind of looks like a clown with, like, a pizza square on his back, but, you know, we love him. Let's ask the chat, should we do another llama or a heart next? I have plenty of both. And I still got a lot of icing, so heart again. All right, that's Tom in here. Thank you for the suggestion, Tom. We'll pull out another squishy heart. Okay, we did red and gold last time. Let's say no red and maybe no white. I'm thinking like a sunset vibe. Which is the most beautiful cookie? The one that doesn't have any icing on it yet? I mean, that's okay. Maybe we'll do something orange. We'll go a little lighter on the icing this time. Ooh, sunset. Okay. All right. Oh, I think I have a paintbrush here. Yeah, I do. So one of the techniques we learned at the cookie decorating workshop was spreading a thin layer onto your cookie and then using an actual paintbrush to spread it out and sort of ombre it all together. So I'll try to do that with this cookie. That'll be fun. Yeah, this is a fun time. I'm having a good time, guys. I'm glad some of you were able to come out and visit today. I really do appreciate it. Let's see. Fawn is this weekend. That's the big ticket on the agenda. I got a package from the hub yesterday, which was a pretty big surprise. And inside the package was my dancer bag, and I had been pretty concerned about whether stuff was going to show up for me or not, because a lot of people within Fawn were like, oh, you're not dancing on campus, we don't have the budget to like ship anything to you, so you're not going to get the snack box, and you're not going to get like the food vouchers, and you're not going to get this and that. And I was like, okay, that's fine, I guess. But I knew that at least I was going to get my dancer shirt because I had paid for it with my registration, and I had paid for the shipping myself. So I knew that that was going to happen, and I had been anxiously awaiting that. And I got the package yesterday. I was like, wow, this is kind of big for just my shirt. And I opened it up, and there was a whole black Nike backpack in there. And I guess that's what they're doing for the dancer bag this year. But I was so happy to find that they had put some of the stuff that I think you usually have to go and pick up in person just into my bag that was shipping to me, because they knew that I wasn't going to be there to be able to retrieve stuff. I know Phoebe was going to try and pick some stuff up for me. I'm glad she didn't have to go to the trouble of it. But yeah, it was super exciting, and you get the long sleeves as your dancer shirt, which is super cute. It's got Fawn's logo on it, and you get to customize it with whatever phrase you want. And I did a for Grant, because he was our Fawn child, our Four Diamonds angel, who passed away last year. So I think Lauren probably got that too. I don't remember, but yeah, I'm dancing with Lauren this year. I've hung out with her a lot, and I'm excited to talk with her this weekend. We actually went on a educational trip together. I don't know if you remember, Sierra, the group that came to one of the Millennium meetings about the Appalachian Trail excursion for like women in engineering. And that was what we ended up going on. And was Isabella Rico there too? I don't think so. I think it was just Lauren from Millennium. Isabella and I went to Costa Rica together, but that's a different story. But no, Appalachian Trail was one of those experiences that I absolutely hated partaking in it, but I look back on it with intermittent fondness. The food was just really horrific. It really just makes me wonder how, like, you know, it's been how many years since people have been camping for leisure and not for, like, necessity of living? Give or take, at least 100 years. And you'd think that by that point we would have figured out how to make food that you can reheat on a camp stove that isn't completely disgusting. There was one dish, and I want to say it was like tomato basil spaghetti. That sounds really inoffensive, right? You know, it feels like you should be able to package up some spaghetti, you know, because I could have just cracked open a can of SpaghettiOs. They would have been fine. They wouldn't have betrayed me. But the instructions for this spaghetti monster concoction had you heat up some water over your camp stove, like in your mug, to boiling, add it to the packet, let it sit for some amount of time, and then take it out and presumably enjoy the experience of eating it. Of course, that was not the case. And in fact, the noodles, and I don't really know why they did this, but the noodles were only about that long, which kind of defeats the point of spaghetti. And they stayed not al dente, just crunchy throughout, which, yeah, was not the best experience. But I will say, not to paint the entire Appalachian Trail in a negative light, I saw some really beautiful scenery. I did get to hang out with a lot of really cool people, and we did some neat design thinking and resiliency activities throughout it. Kind of like macaroni. Yeah, like undercooked bad macaroni, and then the sauce wasn't even anything special either. It was really just a disappointment. The one that was okay that we all traded out for at the halfway point because we had wised up was this like mushroom risotto. I don't know what was wrong with their noodles, but they figured out the rice, and the rice could cook with just the pour over some boiling water method. And that one was actually pretty good. It had a nice mushroom flavor, and whenever we had one of those for dinner, our night wasn't too bad. But it was a fun experience, I guess, in hindsight. But yeah, I don't know if I would do it again. I'm not one who's big on monumental physical activity. It's just not my style. I'd rather stay in and bake something, or even just craft something. Just not hiking. Oh, and the hills. The hills were not very fun. This is our sunset. I don't know if you can see it. Let me shine my flashlight on it. The lighting here is kind of terrible, and I know this. Oh, that's so much worse. Okay. No, never mind. We'll just get it real close and hope that you can see it. Well, it's just going orange to yellow. Maybe that's a little better. One more cookie down. These ones are nice if you don't like a lot of icing. Thank you. These ones are nice if you don't like a lot of icing on your cookie, if you really want to taste the cookie, because a lot of it gets wiped out or spread around, as opposed to these ones, which have kind of like a flood of icing on it. Thank you guys so much. Okay, what's next? A llama or a heart? Llama. Okay, what should we name the llama? Oh, did you say Liam? Or is that just lamb? Llama. We can name him Liam. Oh, good. You can see. Awesome. Okay, so we will name this llama Liam. And we'll see if this time I can make a more believable llama. I'm not sure how to do that with the colors that I have. We're just out of white here. So maybe, he'll just be an abstract sort of llama. We can go for that. If you say something's abstract, people just look at it and they're like, oh yeah, I can totally see where the artist is coming from. I can see their pain. So, this will be a abstract artist pain llama. All right. Let's see. Anybody have any questions or conversation starters? I'll throw it out there. If not, I can just talk about things I have baked in this house in Philadelphia. What is your favorite thing that you've made? Thank you for the question. I think favorite thing that I've made here, visually, I think probably the entremets that we made for Valentine's Day. If you don't know, an entremet is like this French mousse sort of dome, okay? And so it's a patisserie item, and basically you make a sort of sponge cake, and the one that we made was an almond dacroix, and so we used almond flour to make a really light, potently almond-flavored cake, and that serves as the base. You have these half-sphere molds, and you create a sort of mousse to go in them. And so technically, it was a creme bavois, I want to say. You have to, it was a creme chantilly, because you start with a pastry cream, or a creme pâtissière. Then you add in some gelatin and a bunch of white chocolate, and then it becomes a creme bavois. And then you let it cool a little bit, and you whip up some heavy whipping cream, no sugar or anything in it. You just whip it up, and then you fold it into your creme bavois, and you have creme chantilly, the most complicated series of events. And we also made these mango jelly domes that go inside of the entremets. And for those, you need some pectin, fresh mangoes, and a little sugar, and you cook it down. Thank you. You cook it down so that you get that jammy flavor, so that the mango softens and the chunks aren't too big, and you have just the right amount of sugar to leave you with that tart flavor of the mango without just overpowering, because the creme chantilly is very sweet. There's a lot of white chocolate in this, and that was what we noticed. But and then you take your mango and you pour it into the tiny little molds that you have, and you freeze it. And this was all ahead of time. So then we have our creme chantilly. You pour that into the bigger molds. You pop in one of the mango spheres. You place your cutout circle of the almond dacroix, the sponge cake that I talked about. You put that on top, cover the whole thing in plastic wrap, and freeze it, because it needs to solidify before you can do the next step, which is a mirror glaze, which you've probably seen on like cooking shows or on the internet, which is just like the biggest flex a baker can make in the modern day. So a mirror glaze is basically a glaze that's made up of chocolate and gelatin, and some sweetened condensed milk, just for texture. The gelatin allows it to have the consistency it needs to stick onto these frozen mousse cakes, the entremets, and also gives it a little bit of shine, but a lot of that shine comes from the chocolate. And it can be milk chocolate, dark chocolate, semi-sweet, or white chocolate, which is what we did in this recipe to match the other flavors that were coming along. And then you pop your domes out of the freezer where they have been chilling. You bend them out of the sphere molds and try to keep them intact. And then you can pour over this mirror glaze, and it drips all over them, and it leaves them with a really shiny exterior. Yes, exactly. It is the Great British Bake Off nightmare, because if you're bad at taking your entremets out of the molds, they are going to have pock marks in them, and the glaze isn't going to adhere right, and it's going to look bad. If you overheat your chocolate when you're melting it, that's just like messing up tempering, and it's not going to have the shine it needs, so it's not going to look like a mirror. If you let it cool too much, the mirror glaze, you have to wait for it to cool to a certain temperature before you can pour it. If you let it cool too much, it's going to be too thick, and it's not going to run over them properly. Yeah, we're going to pan to a wildlife scene in Britain next. Stay tuned for that. No, if it's too hot, you don't let it cool enough, it's going to be way too runny. It's not going to adhere to your cakes, and it's going to just run right off. It's going to be as though you poured like a sugar syrup over it. So it's very exacting. And I think the problem that we made with ours was we didn't put in enough food coloring. What a sad mistake to make when everything else was right. We didn't put in enough food coloring, so it wasn't as opaque as we had hoped it would be. It was shiny, and it did go on all of the domes, but it just didn't have that opacity that we were looking for. But you put a little thin slice of mango on top of it, try to make it look all fancy. That's one of my favorite parts, trying to put together the presentation of the baked desserts. But you know what? As much as maybe it didn't look perfect, but I will toot my own horn and say it looked pretty good. It tasted really great. It was delicious. The mango with the white chocolate, our only comment was that maybe it should have been a different kind of chocolate in the mirror glaze, because it was a lot of white chocolate in both the creme chantilly and the mirror glaze. But that was the most fun thing I've made appearance-wise. But I think the best thing I've made during this semester was from Claire Saffit's cookbook, Dessert Person. I asked for it for Christmas, and my grandpa got it for me. This is our abstract llama, Liam. He's just got a bunch of swirls on there. He's pretty fun. He's got that Chinese New Year vibe, you know? We're just having fun. I'm going to do a heart next. Anyway, her cookbook is really cute. I always like to watch her Gourmet Makes episodes on Bon Appetit before they got canceled. Groovy Liam, he is groovy. Thank you. Anyway, I always like to watch her videos before Bon Appetit became controversial. And I was looking forward to her cookbook from before that too. And one of the rare times I was willing to myself or have somebody else pay full price for a cookbook, but I wanted it before I had to wait to find it in a half price or something. And I've made a few recipes from the book so far with varying degrees of success. Tom really liked the miso buttermilk biscuits we made. He's nodding his head. They were really good, really delicious straight out of the oven. And they were okay the next few days, but she said in the book that you can keep them frozen and then parcel them out and bake them 4 at a time maybe, just what you're going to eat that night. And I think that's the way to do it moving forward, because when they come out of the oven, they're just so hot and flaky, tender and delicious. I just can't even recommend them enough. And if you've never had miso, it's fun. And they'll stay in your fridge pretty much indefinitely. That's one of the good things, is you don't have to worry too terribly about it expiring. It's just one of those pantry staples, like mustard or mayo, that can sit there for quite a while without you having to worry too much about it. But anyway, the best thing I think I've made, and Tom may disagree, but was Claire Saffit's almond poppy seed bundt cake. And it's one of the easiest recipes in her book, so she claims, and I mean, from what I've experienced so far, I would agree. And basically, heavy on the almond extract, a few tablespoons of poppy seeds, and really just an easy batter that came together all in the, only it was okay, that's fine. They came together all in the KitchenAid, and then you had this delicious glaze with more almond extract, butter, and orange juice. And that cake was just so moist, and especially the first few days on the counter. You know, we're 2 people, so we don't eat it very quickly. But the first few days on the counter, it was just so moist and so delicious. And every time I passed it, I was just cutting off a sliver to eat. Tom can attest to that. But really a delicious dessert that, I have to rank it so highly because it took so little effort. It really was a one-bowl recipe that came together in less than half an hour. And the bake time is pretty long, but it is a bundt cake, so, I'm not going to hold that against her. I don't know. Tom, what do you think was the best thing I've made? You can pop it in the chat. Trying to go for a striped look on this heart. I'm hoping that it brings that across. Probably the biscuits. The biscuits were really good. I really do recommend that recipe to anybody. who has the book or finds the book or just looks up that recipe, it's probably online by this point. People, you know, just put recipes online as they wish. Yeah, they're really good. We're thinking about making some more chocolate chip miso cookies. They're okay. They were okay. We did make, I think maybe it was even last semester, but have you ever had those Tate's cookies that come in a green bag from the grocery store, and they're so crunchy and so buttery and delicious? Phoebe's not here anymore, but we visited, I want to say her Schreier mentor, somebody, in Maryland, and we went out sailing with them on their boat, and they had these cookies with them and offered us a few to try, and oh my goodness, they were so good. But they are decidedly rich people cookies because they're expensive. And so we looked up a copycat recipe to try and replicate them, and we settled on some pretty thin and crispy cookies. They were really good. I enjoyed them. Usually I'm a soft and chewy chocolate chip cookie fan. But this time, at that point, I was really just craving the buttery crisp of those. And sometimes I think that's just what you need. Pop it in the chat, guys. Are you a chewy chocolate chip cookie person or a crunchy chocolate chip cookie person? Chewy for life, yo. All right. Chewy all the way. Yeah, chewy cookies are especially, the cookies in West that they put out. I swear that they, underbake those by, 5 whole minutes, but I would always get one every time I went to West. Those were, the epitome of, and then you could get the milk from the creamery milk from the dispenser right in the dining hall. I loved West Dining Hall. It was a very, weird vibe. I feel like the food in Pollock was objectively better, but I had a lot of my classes over in West, being in EMS, and those cookies were just too hard to resist. I would sit in there between classes sometimes during, the lunch hours and just claim a table, watch some Netflix, do some homework, just keep going back and, refilling a bowl full of, strawberries or cantaloupe or something. Gosh, yeah, I kind of miss comfy dining hall vibes. It was definitely a different time. Yeah. Oh, yeah. I think we're all Penn Staters in here. Feel free to say, what was your favorite dining hall? There's a lot of different ones. I remember also my one consolation of not being at Penn State, they changed the mix so terribly. It's just not the made-to-order haven that it once was, and I was really sad about that. But you know what? Yep, if I'm not going to be there anyway, I guess it just doesn't matter. But I loved their cheesesteaks. You'd have to wait for yeah, exactly. You'd have to wait for 25 minutes to get your one cheesesteak, but boy was it greasy and delicious. And that's college. Greasy and delicious. Let's see, what else have I done that is of note? South. Yeah, I really liked the a la carte options that South provided. The burrito place was really good. Burrito place was good. I liked the paninis. They had pesto until they would run out. They would always, at the end of the day, run out of pesto. And I'm just like, really? By this point, you haven't planned to have enough pesto? But clearly not. But yeah, that was, it's just so nice to know they have all the ingredients and you don't have to go buy them yourself, Oh, I miss that. I really do. But yeah, West was always pretty good. They had a lot of options. Although they never seemed to have enough seating. That was kind of sad. In the lunch rush, it was always hard to find a place to sit. But yeah, Dawn is this weekend, and it's definitely interesting how they are going about it. you can tell that they've put a lot of work in to some parts of this, and then not very much work to other parts of it. Like, so I'm dancing this year, which is super exciting. And they have been plugging that they've made a dancer website. You know, that sounds great. That sounds awesome. It's going to have all the resources you're going to need. It's going to have recipes to cook along with us during Thon weekend, you know, all this fun stuff. And so I was like, okay, cool. And we were going shopping yesterday. So I texted my DRCM, who's like my Dancers Relation Committee member, assigned to me. So she's there to help me with questions I have. And I was like, oh, I remember in one of the meetings, they talked about there was going to be a non-pizza cook-along, which sounds fun, sounds delicious. What are the ingredients for that? Where's the recipe? Because I'm going shopping today before the snowstorm hits, and I don't want to miss anything. And basically they said, oh, well, that's going to be on the Dancer website, but Dancer website isn't going up until tomorrow, the day before Thon. So yeah, that was kind of wild to me. But to be fair, I think they've had to deal with a lot of unexpected logistics this year. So if something had to suffer, you know, a couple of recipes going missing is probably not the worst case scenario. But yeah, we have been getting a lot of snow here over the past month or two, more than I kind of expected. But I still haven't built a snowman, and I'm kind of sad. I feel like I'm missing my chance here. But I just don't even know if it's packable snow right now. I'm not sure if it would even turn out, and you hate to see that happen when it just falls apart. We did go sledding when I was home at my parents' house with Tom. We went out to this duck pond that's in my neighborhood, and we brought 2 sleds. And full disclosure, I don't think I've been sledding for at least since like sophomore year of high school. So these sleds have just been sitting on our deck out in the cold and the elements and the changing temperatures, and they, you know, were not looking too great, but we figured that for just a couple hours of sledding, they would be fine. And so I grabbed a circle one, a saucer sled, and Tom grabbed a longer purple, like, toboggan sled. And so we climbed up the hill that was at the duck pond, which luckily enough has enough of a run to not throw you into the pond. We climbed up, and I think Tom tried to go first, and sat down on the sled, and we heard a loud crack. And we were like, oh no. And then he tried to slide down the hill, and the sled just continued to crack all the way down. And I think he only was able to do 1 or 2 runs with it. But by the end of it, we had tried to ride that sled so much that it was in, I think, about like 30 different pieces. And we just had to pick them all up and bring them to the garbage can. But luckily, my saucer sled stayed good. They were both made out of plastic, which is why they were able to be so brittle from the cold. But we were glad that we at least had one, and we just took turns with it, which was kind of nice because that hill was steep. It was really steep, and it was definitely an adventure, and nice to have a little bit of a break in between walking all the way up that hill. But yeah, that was a fun experience. And then my mom made us hot cocoa when we came back in. Truly, what is more cozy than your mom making you hot chocolate? That is just like the epitome of cozy times for me. But yeah, one other thing that we made while I was here, something that I forgot about that's pretty cool, is marshmallows. I don't know if you've ever thought about making your own marshmallows, but I recommend it, and I think Tom would too. It was pretty fun, and they were really delicious. They took us a while to eat them, but They were really good. Okay, so here is the cookie I just made. My thoughts about this one. I think that the middle section of this looks like a lot of mustard. Like maybe this one is like honey mustard and this one is just like French's. But just the pigments of these yellows really just puts me in mind of mustard. But there's the stripe. I'm wondering if maybe I should just like, maybe just mess it up, you know? Maybe just like, oh, it's, see the problem is, oh, I shouldn't have done it. It's already kind of dry, but I've already started. You know what? Yeah, we're just going to do it. You know, we're just going to eat the cookie anyway. So what does it really matter if it looks a little wonky? I'm trying to get that like herringbone effect that you see people do with sugar cookies. I think the real problem is that the icing has solidified by this point. But you can see it a little bit like up in the red with the orange there, how it pulled into it. Mustard cookie. Yeah. I wonder if that would be any good. If there's any possible way that you could flavor a cookie with mustard and have it be delicious. Or is it just so ingrained in our minds as a savory flavor that we just wouldn't appreciate it? I wonder. I really do. Yeah, but anyway, marshmallows are surprisingly easy to make. Thank you, Sierra. Yeah, someday I'll wow the world with my delicious mustard cookies. I feel like I'll have to make a whole line of condiment cookies. So I'll have like mustard, mayo, ketchup, barbecue sauce, and they'll just be like surprising takes on condiments in cookies. You know, that would be something. That would be something. But the marshmallows are super fun because once you made them, one of my favorite Christmas gifts I got this year was from lovely Tom, and it was a kitchen torch, allowing me to play with fire, always a good option. So I love custards, and within that is creme brulee, of course, maybe the most iconic. And one of the most exciting parts of creme brulee, which I never got to experience, was getting to broil the sugar on top of the, that didn't work out, on top of the custard. And for that, you either put it in the broiler of your oven, which is what we always did, or you actually get out a kitchen torch, just like a tiny little blowtorch. It's actually very fun. And apply heat to the sugar until it melts and starts to caramelize. And so with the marshmallows, these homemade marshmallows, they're so soft and they're so tender. And we would just poke one with a fork, hold it up, and then in the other hand get the blowtorch going, the kitchen torch, and brulee the marshmallow. And it was like having toasted marshmallows inside. See you, Sierra. Thank you so much for coming. I'm glad you got to show up. Good luck with class. Yeah, you can toast it and have like a campfire roasted marshmallow in the comfort of your own home, which is just absolutely so delicious. I had a lot of fun eating those. Probably more fun like toasting it than even eating them at some point. But yeah, it was a really fun thing, and I think we're going to try it again because the flavor that we made, you know, the first time I make something, I usually try to make it in the recommended or traditional flavor, just so I get an idea of what I'm trying to make. And so the marshmallows, we made them vanilla, and I had a nice special Nielsen Massey vanilla extract, which is pretty exciting because that's a big thing in the baking community. But I tried it out, and they had a really nice vanilla flavor, but at the end of the day, they were kind of like store-bought marshmallows. You know, they are these vanilla-flavored, gelatinized marshmallows like you would expect. And they were delicious, but we're thinking next time, just like I made these cookies with like the amaretto, we threw in a shot of amaretto, I'm thinking about trying to make boozy marshmallows. I saw this online, and I think it might be really good in like hot chocolate. Try to make some like bourbon or whiskey marshmallows and then have those and some fresh homemade hot chocolate. That just sounds like a really cozy winter day to me. But yeah, I'm excited to give those a try and see if I'm any better at the process than I was the first time. I think it's really mostly just about cooking your sugar to a certain temperature, which now that I have a candy thermometer is super easy. It's much easier than just trying to eyeball temperature as though that was ever going to work out. I don't know. We tried it last semester. We tried to make toffee without a candy thermometer, and that was a journey we shouldn't have taken. But, you live and you learn. It has been an hour, so I want to say thank you for everybody who's popped in. I really appreciate you guys coming out and talking with me and watching me try to decorate all these cookies and listening to me ramble about food and travel and the books I've been reading. But yeah, I will end it here. Thank you guys so much for coming, and thank you so much. And I hope I see you guys soon. I miss everybody. I hope we're able to get together on Zoom or something. Okay, bye guys.